My brother stole my entire savings after I helped him recover from addiction, so I took legal action, and now he's begging me to drop everything. I'm a 27-year-old guy, and for most of my life, I believe protecting my little brother was my responsibility. I don't know if it was the way our parents raised us, or if it was just something I forced onto myself. But ever since Ryan started slipping into addiction, I became the one who cleaned up every mess he made. I covered his bills, his hospital visits, his late-night phone calls where he swore he was done this time, and even the emotional shrapnel our parents never wanted to deal with. They always looked at me like I was the strong one, the reliable one, the one who would somehow guide Ryan back to being normal. It was unfair, but I swallowed it because I loved him and because I genuinely thought I could save him. I still remember the night he hit rock bottom. I found him sitting on the curb outside a gas station, shivering, staring at nothing like his soul had stepped out and forgotten to return. The cold air smelled like gasoline and rain, and my breath fogged in front of me as I walked toward him. "Ryan, hey, look at me," I whispered, kneeling beside him. He didn't even flinch. He just said, "I messed everything up again, didn't I?" in a voice so small I barely recognized it. That night, I brought him home. I let him take my bed while I slept on the couch. I cooked for him, talked him through the shakes, drove him to recovery meetings. And honestly, for a moment, I thought maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. He seemed grateful. He apologized. He made promises with steady eyes instead of trembling ones. During all this, I kept working, saving every extra dollar I could for a house down payment. It was the one dream I held on to quietly, the one thing I thought would make my future feel secure. And with Ryan getting better, I let myself feel hopeful for the first time in years. But what I didn't know, what I couldn't have imagined, was that those hopeful days were the beginning of the darkest betrayal I'd ever face. For the first time in years, Ryan actually looked steady. He woke up early, made breakfast, and even left little sticky notes on the fridge with things like, "Thanks for everything, man," or "Meeting at 3 p.m. today." I'd hear him humming while cooking or folding laundry, and it felt surreal, like the brother I used to know was crawling back out of the wreckage. He attended recovery meetings consistently, came home talking about breakthroughs, and even cooked dinner a few nights a week. And I'll admit, a part of me clung to that progress like it was oxygen. I started letting myself relax. The constant tension in my chest eased. I'd come home from work and actually feel warmth instead of dread. "You're doing amazing," I told him one night while we washed dishes. He smiled, drying his hands with a towel. "I'm trying, bro. I really am." There was something softer in his voice, something almost childlike, and it made me believe that maybe all the years of pain and chaos were finally settling. Our parents, of course, suddenly acted like they had been his support system all along. My mom called me saying, "Ryan's really changing. See, he just needed space." Space. I wanted to laugh. They had no idea what I'd been carrying. But I swallowed it, like always, because arguing with them never changed a thing. Then little things started happening. One afternoon, Ryan casually asked, "Hey, how much do you have saved up now? Just curious." Another day, he asked which bank I used in case I ever open an account. His tone was light, harmless, almost conversational. I didn't think twice. I thought maybe he was finally trying to be financially responsible. "Nothing much," I said with a shrug. "Just enough to start planning for a house next year." "That's huge," he said, eyes widening slightly. "I'm proud of you." That night, I logged into my account just to admire the number I'd worked so hard for. My future, my stability, my dream. And I had no idea I was looking at it for the last time. It started subtly, little shifts in Ryan's routine that didn't match the calm, grounded version of him I thought I was seeing. He began leaving the house earlier than usual, sometimes before sunrise, mumbling something about extra meetings or helping a friend move. Then he'd come back late, smelling like cold air and sweat, offering flimsy excuses that didn't make sense. Traffic was insane, he'd say, even when the streets outside were dead silent. Or, I stopped to think for a while, but his eyes were darting everywhere except mine. Then things started disappearing. First, it was one of my watches. I assumed I misplaced it. Then my old gaming console vanished from the living room cabinet. "Ryan, did you move my stuff?" I asked one night when I couldn't find it anywhere. He froze, then forced a confused frown. "Why would I take your console? I don't even play games." His tone was sharp, offended, like I'd insulted him by even asking. A knot began forming in my stomach. Something felt off, but every time I tried to bring it up gently, he snapped. "Stop micromanaging me," he muttered once, slamming his bedroom door so hard the picture frames rattled. Another time, when I asked if everything was okay, he shot back. "Just because I'm recovering doesn't mean you get to interrogate me like I'm a criminal." I tried telling myself it was part of the recovery process. Up and down days, emotional turbulence, possible triggers. I wanted to believe he was still trying. I wanted to believe he hadn't slipped back into the darkness I'd dragged him out of. My best friend, Mark, wasn't convinced. "Dude, be careful," he said after I vented to him. "Addicts don't change overnight. Watch your stuff." "Watch him." I brushed it off, telling him Ryan was just stressed. But something in his warning stuck with me. That night, long after the house went silent and Ryan's door clicked shut, I sat on the couch with my laptop. My hands trembled as I typed in my password. For the first time, I felt afraid of what I might find. The moment my banking app opened, my heart stopped. The number, my number, the one I checked every few weeks for motivation, the savings I had built dollar by dollar over 5 years, it was gone. Not reduced, not touched, completely drained. My chest tightened so fast I felt like someone had slammed a fist into my ribs. I refreshed the app 3 times, convinced it had to be a glitch, but each time the same empty balance stared back at me like a punchline to the cruelest joke of my life. I clicked into the transaction list, and panic roared through me so violently my hands started shaking. There were multiple transfers, large ones, sent to an account I didn't recognize. Same amount each time, spaced out over several days, all authorized from a device labeled Home Desktop. My home desktop, the one sitting in the living room. The one used while I was working 10-hour shifts. I dialed the bank immediately, pacing the living room in the dark. "Sir," the representative said gently, "all transfers were authenticated using your device and your credentials. There is no indication of forced access. So you're telling me someone in my house did this?" I whispered, even though I already knew the answer. I didn't wait. I stormed straight into Ryan's room, flicking the lights on so hard the bulb buzzed. "Where's my money?" I said, my voice breaking in ways I couldn't control. Ryan shot up, eyes wide, already glistening with tears. I borrowed it," he choked out. "I was going to invest it. I swear I was going to pay you back." "Borrow?" I snapped. "You emptied everything. You stole my future." His face twisted, panic morphing into excuses so sloppy they tripped over each other. "My friend said it was a guaranteed return. I thought. I didn't think you'd notice yet. I just—" "Stop lying," I screamed. "Just stop." The mask dropped. The tears dried. And Ryan exploded. "You would have wasted the money anyway," he yelled, spit flying. "At least I was trying to do something with it." In that moment, it hit me. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a relapse. This was betrayal. Calculated, deliberate, and already far from over. The next morning, after pacing the house like a ghost all night, I called my parents. I didn't even plan on telling them at first, but the weight of everything had started crushing me from the inside. My voice was trembling when I explained what happened, how Ryan drained my entire savings, how he lied, how he manipulated me while pretending to recover. For a moment, there was silence on the line, and I foolishly thought they were processing it, maybe even feeling the same shock and anger I did. But then my mom sighed in that exhausted, disappointed way she usually reserved for Ryan's mistakes. "You shouldn't have pushed him so hard," she said. "He's fragile, you know that." Fragile. My savings were gone, my future was gone, but apparently Ryan was the one who needed sympathy. My dad jumped in next. "Why are you even talking about legal action? He's your brother. Families don't drag each other to court." "Dad, he stole everything I had," I said, my voice cracking. "And you yelled at him." My mom snapped back, as if that somehow made us even. "You know how yelling affects him. You could have triggered him." Then Ryan grabbed the phone. His voice shook like he was on the verge of sobbing. "He abandoned me emotionally," he whimpered. "He doesn't support me like you guys think. He made me feel worthless. I didn't think he'd care about the money that much. Money. Just money. The house I'd been saving for. The stability I'd been building toward. My future." Hearing him twist everything so easily made my stomach turn. It wasn't just the theft anymore. It was how natural the manipulation came to him. How quickly he stepped into the victim role. How eagerly my parents embraced it. When I hung up, My phone buzzed with messages from friends I had vented to. Dude, report him. You have to file a police case. He's going to ruin you if you let this slide. But my hands were shaking too much to type back. I felt sick, exhausted, and completely betrayed. Because for the first time in my life, I realized this wasn't just Ryan against me. It was me against my entire family. After the call with my parents, something inside me snapped. The kind of shift where anger burns so deep it becomes clarity. If Ryan had stolen my savings once, who knew what else he'd touched? So I started digging. I went through emails, bank notifications, old statements I'd ignored because I was always rushing between work and taking care of him. The deeper I went, the colder my blood felt. And then I found it, a string of messages from numbers I didn't recognize, all with the same tone, urgent, demanding, threatening. At first, I thought they were spam. But the subject lines, payment overdue, final warning, contact immediately, had my full attention. When I opened them, every single one was addressed to me. My name, my address, my last 4 digits. They weren't reaching out to Ryan. They were reaching out to the person he had been pretending to be. I grabbed my phone and dialed one of the numbers. Hello, this is Collections 4. I think you have the wrong guy, I interrupted. The man paused. Are you not the one who placed bets under this account? I didn't place anything, I said, heat rising behind my ears. But my brother. Sir, he cut in. The debts are tied to your identity. Legally, they fall on you. My knees almost buckled. Ryan hadn't relapsed. He hadn't been buying drugs. He'd joined an underground gambling circle, and he'd been using my name, my accounts, my clean record to do it. Weeks. He had been doing this for weeks. I tore through my files, printing screenshots, downloading statements, organizing everything into a folder even though my hands were shaking so violently the papers kept slipping. Every transfer, every login, every message that proved he had been pretending to be me. For the first time, I understood I wasn't just dealing with a thief. I was dealing with someone who had put my entire life at risk. This wasn't about money anymore. It was about identity theft, about legal liability, about losing everything I had ever built. And as I stared at the stack of evidence under the harsh lamplight, I made the decision I had been terrified to make. I was going to protect myself legally, even if it meant destroying whatever was left of my relationship with Ryan. I decided that if my family was going to keep defending Ryan blindly, then they were going to see the truth with their own eyes. So I called them all over, my mom, my dad, and Ryan, and told them to sit at the dining table. The air felt thick, like the house itself knew something irreversible was about to happen. I placed the folder of evidence in the center: bank statements, screenshots, debt collector letters, login timestamps, everything. My hands weren't shaking anymore. I'd passed fear hours ago. Now I was just tired. I need you all to listen, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. And no one speaks until I'm finished. Ryan immediately leaned forward, panic in his eyes. Dude, don't do this. Come on, we can talk privately. No, I cut him off sharply. You've been talking privately with my bank accounts, my identity, and my future. This conversation stays right here. I opened the folder and started laying everything out, piece by piece. Each page hit the table with a soft thud that felt louder than shouting. The timelines, the transfers, the debt warnings, the device logins, the gambling account tied to my name. By the 5th page, my mom was already shaking her head in denial. This is cruel, she said. You're humiliating him. Humiliating? I laughed, an ugly, broken sound. He stole my life, my savings, my identity, and you still think I'm the problem? My dad slammed his hand on the table. You've always held power over him. This is just another way you control him. That was it. Something inside me broke loose. Control him? I snapped. I raised him. I cleaned up every mess you two ignored. I sacrificed everything. My money, my peace, my future. While you praised him for breathing. Ryan suddenly stood up, face red and twisted. You're blowing everything out of proportion. You think you're so perfect. Get out, I said coldly. He stormed out. My parents followed him without looking back. And there I was, alone in my own living room, surrounded by evidence of how deeply I'd been betrayed. I picked up my phone, exhaled slowly, and dialed the number for the lawyer I'd researched the night before. Hi, I'm ready to proceed. I thought filing the case would be the moment things finally started getting better, that the truth would speak for itself. I was wrong. Within days, Ryan went nuclear. He told relatives, neighbors, even old family friends that I had set him up, that I stole money from him, and that he was heartbroken his own brother would frame him for attention. The worst part? People believed him. He showed up to gatherings looking clean, teary-eyed, fragile, playing the role of the wounded little brother perfectly. Slowly, messages from relatives stopped. Group chats went silent. My aunt texted me, "You should be ashamed. He adored you." I stared at the screen, feeling something inside me collapse. Meanwhile, the real-world damage kept snowballing. I opened my mailbox one evening to find 3 new letters from collection agencies, threatening legal action for debts I had placed under my name. My stomach dropped so hard I had to grab the counter to steady myself. Then HR called me into a private meeting. "Your financial records triggered a background flag," my manager said, sliding a folder toward me. "We need to clarify these discrepancies." I felt heat rise behind my eyes. "That's not me," I whispered. My identity was stolen. The look he gave me wasn't cruel, but it wasn't trusting either. It was the look you give someone who might be lying. Someone unstable. Someone hiding something. Walking out of that meeting felt like stepping into an icy void. Everything I had built, my job, my relationships, my reputation, was crumbling because of someone I had literally saved from the edge of death. That night, sitting in my car outside the office, I finally broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet, hollow collapse inside my chest. Betrayal from Ryan was expected at this point, but betrayal from everyone else? That cut deeper than anything he had ever done. I stared at the steering wheel, palms pressed to my eyes, breathing through the panic, realizing one brutal truth. If I didn't fight back, fully, unapologetically, I was going to lose everything. My identity, my future, my entire life. Sitting in my car that night, the exhaustion in my body felt like it was sinking into my bones. But beneath it, something harder began forming, something sharper than fear. I couldn't keep folding myself in half for people who refused to see the truth. So the next morning, before I could talk myself out of it, I called my lawyer and scheduled an urgent meeting. I gathered every scrap of evidence I had, printouts, screenshots, phone logs, debt notices, and stuffed them into a folder that felt heavier than it should. "I'm done protecting him," I said the moment I sat down in the lawyer's office. My lawyer nodded calmly, adjusting his glasses. "Good. Now let's protect you." For the next 2 hours, we built a detailed timeline. When the transfers happened, what devices were used, the IP addresses from the gambling sites, the calls from debt collectors, even the dates when items had gone missing from my house. As we worked, I felt the anger sharpen into focus. Not wild rage, precision. Every lie Ryan told, every manipulation, every rumor he spread became another point of clarity in the narrative we were forming. "We can prove identity theft," my lawyer said, tapping a document. "And fraud, and unauthorized charges. This isn't a small case." I swallowed hard. Will it ruin him? His expression didn't soften. He ruined himself. On the way home, I stopped by the electronics store and bought a small security camera setup. It felt paranoid, but after everything, paranoia felt like self-defense. I installed them quietly that night, each click of the mounting brackets echoing the reality that my home hadn't been a safe place for months. The next morning, I received another letter, this one more aggressive, threatening wage garnishment for debts I didn't create. I didn't panic this time. I scanned it, saved it, added it to the folder. By the time the sun set, my evidence was organized, labeled, and prepared for court. And as I slid the final document into place, I felt it for the first time since everything began. A sense of control returning. A sense that the truth wasn't just on my side. It was finally ready to fight with me. The first sign that things were shifting came early one morning, just as I was leaving for work. 2 police officers pulled up to Ryan's apartment complex across the street. I didn't know whether to watch or look away, but my feet rooted themselves to the pavement. Minutes later, Ryan stepped outside, hair uncombed, barefoot, hands trembling, as the officers approached him. They didn't cuff him, but they questioned him right there in broad daylight, voices calm but firm. Neighbors peeked through curtains. Someone recorded on their phone. And for the first time, the public saw the side of Ryan I'd been fighting alone. An hour later, my parents stormed into my place without knocking. "How could you do this to him?" my mom screamed, eyes red. "I didn't do anything to him," I replied quietly. "He did this to himself." "You're destroying the family," my dad snapped, jabbing a finger at me like he was pointing at a criminal. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just opened the folder on the table, the same folder they refused to look at before. "Read it," I said, "or leave." They left. That afternoon, the community shockwave began. Ryan's gambling associates, the ones he kept insisting were just friends, stopped answering his calls. The sympathy he earned by crying to relatives started dissolving as rumors of police involvement spread. Even the relatives who once blocked me stopped calling him back. People don't like being associated with legal trouble. When the official court letter arrived, it felt like the final line had been drawn. A hearing date set. Charges moving forward. Restitution requested. Evidence formally submitted. My lawyer called and said, "This is solid. The court won't ignore this." That night, I sat on the edge of my bed, listening to the faint hum of the security cameras I'd installed. For the first time in months, I felt something loosen in my chest. Not relief, not victory, just a quiet sense that the tide had finally turned. But I knew this wasn't over. The courtroom would be another battlefield, and Ryan wasn't finished fighting. The weeks leading up to the hearing felt surreal, like my life had cracked open and I was watching the pieces rearrange themselves without my permission. Then the fallout finally hit. Ryan got fired from his job after HR received inquiries from investigators confirming he was tied to multiple fraud complaints. My phone buzzed with the news from a cousin. They let him go today. He looked wrecked. A part of me should have felt satisfaction, I guess, but all I felt was a heavy, sinking exhaustion. This was the same brother I once dragged out of a gas station parking lot, the same boy I protected through every disaster, and somehow he still chose to destroy me. Relatives who once ignored me started calling again. "I didn't know it was that serious," one said. "We thought Ryan was telling the truth," another admitted quietly. It didn't feel like validation. It felt like too little, too late. The damage had already been done. My reputation, my job security, my relationships had all been shredded before the truth surfaced. But at least the lies were unraveling now. My parents tried to keep defending him, but their voices didn't carry the same weight. The evidence was public. The truth was solid. Even they couldn't deny what the court documents spelled out. And slowly, their anger shifted, not toward Ryan, but toward the consequences he couldn't escape from this time. Then, out of nowhere, Ryan started sending long, rambling messages. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. It wasn't supposed to fall on you. I just needed help. Why couldn't you support me without attacking me?" Every message twisted himself into the victim again, like he was oblivious to what he'd done. There was no apology, no accountability, just excuses wrapped in self-pity. Meanwhile, the bank officially recognized the transfers as fraudulent. They froze the disputed charges, began reversing some fees, and filed their own report aligning with my case. My lawyer called to say, "This strengthens everything. The judge will see the pattern clearly." That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet hum of the refrigerator, feeling the cold stillness of the house. In just a few days, I'd face Ryan in court, and whatever happened next would decide the rest of our lives. And for the first time, I wasn't scared, just ready. The morning of the hearing felt strangely calm. No panic, no shaking hands, just a steady, heavy awareness that this was the moment everything would finally be laid bare. When I walked into the courtroom, Ryan was already there, slumped in his chair, wearing a wrinkled shirt like he'd slept in it. His eyes flicked up when he saw me, glassy and swollen, but he looked away immediately. My parents sat behind him, my mom clutching tissues, my dad staring at me like I'd betrayed the family. But I didn't let myself absorb their disappointment. Not today. When the judge entered and the proceedings began, it felt like the room compressed into a narrow tunnel. Just me, Ryan, and the truth sitting between us. The prosecution laid out the evidence in clean, undeniable pieces. The fraudulent transfers, the IP logs, the gambling accounts tied to my identity, the stolen items, the debt collector's testimonies. Each fact landed with a clarity that made my chest ache. I kept my gaze forward, refusing to watch Ryan crumble beside me. Then the judge asked if I wanted to speak. My throat tightened, but I stood. For years, I began, voice steady. I carried my brother through addiction, homelessness, and consequences he never had to face. I paid for his mistakes, his debts, his relapses. I thought protecting him was my responsibility. But he stole everything I worked for, my savings, my identity, my reputation, and then he lied about it. He didn't just break the law. He broke every piece of trust we had left. I sat down slowly, heart pounding like it wanted out of my chest. Ryan's turn came next. He tried to speak, but choked on the first sentence. Finally, in a cracked voice, he said, "I'm sorry." Not a performance, not manipulation, just a broken whisper of someone who'd run out of lies. The judge issued restitution, mandatory rehab, financial monitoring, and a suspended sentence because I requested leniency. Not for him, for myself. I didn't want to carry hatred forever. Outside the courthouse, Ryan staggered toward me. "Please," he whispered, "don't cut me out. You're all I have left." I looked at him, really looked at him, and felt nothing but an exhausted kind of peace. "I can forgive you," I said quietly, "but I can't trust you, and I can't be your safety net anymore." His face crumpled, but I walked away before he could speak again. A month later, I signed the papers for my first home. Standing in the empty living room, sunlight pouring through the windows, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: freedom. Because sometimes the greatest act of love isn't saving someone. It's saving yourself.